Hey there everyone, it's Scurvy, back again with another episode of Scurvy Shit List. And today's video, it's gonna be a lot more on the serious side. Usually when I do this section right here, I'm usually drunk and I have a cringy sketch to go along with it. But I don't think that's really fitting for this video. For the subject of this video, this frog-faced motherfucker you see right here, is pure, unfiltered, unadulterated evil. The things he has done are absolutely reprehensible. The impact that his quote-unquote research has done is also reprehensible and vile. So rather than having a bit more of a jokey tone this episode, I'm not talking about a piece of shit, but is also stupid like Cyrax, or just a dumb broad like Brittany Venti. No, I'm talking about somebody who's really, really evil. This guy is smart, I'll give him that. That's all I'll really give him, is that he's smart. But at the end of the day, he is still evil. And he knows what he's done. That's the thing about these degenerates. They know what they do. But rather than getting into why I don't like him in this rather unscripted fashion, no outline on this part at all, let's just get to the history of the guy. Let's explain who he is first, before I go on about why I don't like him. Alfred Kinsey was a notable professor of many subjects such as biology, entomology, zoology, and sexology, with the fourth one being the most notable one, and the subject that he has the most influence in. In 1947, he founded the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University, which is still around to this day. It's all about sexology and has a methodology which is most notable in its confidentiality. Out of all his works, his most infamous would have to be Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, written in 1948, which is full of bad research. A sequel book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, was written a few years after, using the same bad methodology. With those basic facts out of the way, let's go over the reasons why I fucking despise this guy, and if there is a hell, I hope he's burning in it. As I alluded to earlier, the people who Kinsey sampled were not the normal people that he should have been sampling. They were primarily homosexuals, prison inmates, and other degenerates across society. I think one notable example was that he interviewed farm boys who did bad things to their animals, which is very weird, and he would get into weird details about it. Another little weird quirk of his research was that a lot of it involved sexual abuse. How? He was notable for making literal pornography with his subjects and also his fellow researchers, quote-unquote. The love child of Kinsey's research has to be social emotional learning, SEL for short. It has had a far reach across the country, and it's not the good kind of reach. It promotes a lot of fucked up shit, and it's a hot button issue among educators and parents right now, for a good reason. It just so happens that throughout the pandemic, this is the one positive thing I gotta say about it, is that parents actually got to see what their kids were learning, and the more observant parents, the more researched parents, knew exactly where this shit was coming from, and they were not tolerating any of it. Which, good on them. They shouldn't tolerate the degeneracy that Kinsey's research brought about. From what I learned about SEL itself from people like James Lindsay of New Discourses, it's really fucked up, and I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that when I was learning about the birds and the bees. Now, I've been saying throughout this video, and if you saw my stream last week at the time of recording this, how I kept on saying that this guy is fucked up and all that, that mainly has to do with his book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, particularly a graph in that book, which he and his colleagues actually argued about even including, which Kinsey kind of won that argument at the end of the day, because you could take a look at it. It basically measured the orgasms of males from, adulthood all the way to basically a newborn baby. It was that fucked up, and this shit is influencing sex ed curriculum. I have a feeling in the chick edition of that book, there's probably a fucked up graph of the same nature but with chicks instead of guys. If you have a brain, you're able to make the inference that Kinsey doesn't really have much of a moral compass. His cohorts also said something similar, such as Paul Gebhard. He says that Kinsey was an experimenter, and to me that communicates, well, he very much is a degenerate with no moral compass. In the documentary Kinsey's Pedophiles, which is linked in the description, there are also a few other of his former cohorts who had to quit because of all the fucked up shit that was going on in the Kinsey Institute. And if that guy were around, I would certainly tell him that the Kinsey Institute is probably doing even more fucked up shit than it was back in the 40s. A lot of quote-unquote trans affirmation is built on Kinsey's idea that children are sexual beings and are able to consent to things, which is, well, batshit crazy and wrong. If anybody says otherwise, yeah, I'm going to question your ass right away. And speaking of pedophilia, did you know that Alfred Kinsey worked with a literal pedophile? The most notable one being a guy going by the codename of Mr. Green. I forget his actual name, but that documentary I mentioned earlier says it. He went to this guy to get the results that he wanted for that fucked up book of his. It should also be of note that Mr. Green, quote unquote, has molested 600 children. Yeah, I said that, and there's proof behind that claim too. It's in that documentary. Despite leftists saying, oh, we don't like the Nazis, we hate the Nazis, punch a Nazi and all that, it seems like one of their greatest heroes literally uses Nazi tactics for their fucked up experiments. Wouldn't you know, history tends to rhyme. By the way, Kinsey also worked with a literal Nazi as well. The guy is not popping up in my head, but that documentary names him. But what do I mean by literal Nazi tactics for their experiments? Well, just because something can have an experiment be done for doesn't mean that it should. If you need me to list some specific names, you could just listen to Slayer's song Angel of Death and do some historical digging of your own. Throughout my research of the guy, I noticed that Kinsey never had any regret for the things that he did, and the motivation behind that is because he had a pretty repressed religious childhood. But just because he had been through some bad shit as a kid, that doesn't mean you have to inflict it upon innocent children. But ultimately, this guy played society like a fucking fiddle. The sexual revolution happened. My life is worse because of it. A lot of people that I know, particularly young men, have also been affected by it as much as I have. Hookup culture has very fucked up origins, and part of those origins is from Alfred Kinsey and his fucked up research, as well as many other people like Gail Rubin and John Money. So Kinsey, if they have YouTube down in hell, I certainly want you to hear why you're on my shit list. If you're still wondering why this guy is on the shit list, allow me to tell it to y'all in a shorter method. Well, this guy's the worst kind of pedophile by disguising his degenerate shit under the veil of quote-unquote science. I'll restate it again. His methodology was crap. The way he did his research was fucking degenerate and horrific. Need I say more? Anyways, I'm done talking about this motherfucker. Let's see who else is on the shit list. Well, that sure was quite the episode. It got really fucking dark. Now, let's see who else is gonna be on the shit list this season. Wowza canowza, it's my former guildmaster. I wonder why he's on the shit list. All I know is that it's going to be a much lighter episode, and it's just probably going to be a lot of pure bitching and moaning from old Scurvy. That being said, thanks for watching, everyone.